Welcome to the Life You Love podcast.
We're your hosts, Grace Lemire
and Erin Convertini.
This podcast is for the dreamers and the doers.
For the women who want to create a life they genuinely love waking up to.
We believe that life's short, so let's build one we love.
Today is officially 100 episodes of the Life You Love podcast. We've been podcasting every single Monday since November of 2023. And if you've been here from the beginning, you know that we have learned a lot. I remember we filmed that first episode of the podcast together in a dark hotel room, and we were sharing one microphone. So the audio was completely terrible. We had no idea what we were doing, but some of you listening today actually have been here since then, which is so cool. For today's episode, we want to share some of the biggest lessons that we've learned about business from filming 100 podcast episodes. No matter what you're doing or what you're trying to start, this episode is for you.
This is so crazy. We map out like all of our podcasts, like planning and Notion and stuff. And I remember we were getting really close. And we were like, oh my gosh, we're going to be at episode 100, which is a crazy thing to think about because I don't remember the exact stat. I think you know the stat better than I do, but it's something like 90% of podcasts don't make it past episode 3 or something.
I think it's, like 90% don't make it past episode 3. And then 99% of podcasts don't make it past episode 20. So episode 20 was really big for us. We're like, okay, if we've made it past here, like we are totally going to make it. And fast forward, we've done 80 episodes past then. And yes, we have grown and we're super happy with the growth that we've had. Like you guys DM us all the time and you leave comments in Spotify that are so kind and so nice. And people tell us all the time that they're really loving the podcast. They tag us in their Instagram stories, which is so cool. But I will say, and we've talked about this very, very openly before, I don't think that we've seen the growth that we thought we would have at this point. Like back when we got to episode 20 and we're like, you know what, we really do like this. We are starting to find our groove. We're going to keep going. I feel like we probably would have thought that we would be farther along. So this episode will be cool to kind of talk about some of the things that we've learned about business, about podcasting from doing 100 episodes, because that's a lot. Every single Monday for 2 years is a lot.
And we and I will say, and this is maybe it's not necessarily a lesson, but maybe it is there have been weeks where, for example, the other week we reposted an old episode. And I don't know if we put this out anywhere, but the reason that we reposted the old episode is because we went to get on here and record and the software wasn't working. And we sat here literally for an hour trying to get the software to work. And it just kept saying that there was a poor internet connection, even though there was no poor internet connection. It wouldn't save any files. And we were like, okay, we just spent an hour trying to figure this out. And now we don't even have time to film another episode elsewhere. We ended up filming in Zoom. We had to adapt. It's just we've reposted old episodes on weeks where we didn't have time to film something, or if one of us was out or whatever, we have had to repurpose in some ways, but we have not missed a Monday. And that is something I take so much pride in. We have not missed a single week on this podcast, whether it was a reposted episode or something new. There has been new content every single Monday for almost 2 years. And I think it just goes to show you have to be committed to it and show up every week, no matter what. Even if it's a little messy or a little sloppy one week, you still have to show up.
Oh, and it has been messy and it has been sloppy. I mean, if you watch the video of this podcast, yes, we're using good mics and our audio is good. And I think that's really important for a podcast. And this episode by any means is not a how to start a podcast or lessons that we've learned about the technology behind a podcast by any means, because I feel everyone listening probably does not want to start a podcast on their own. But we have good mics and we have these little $10 headphones from Amazon, but we do not have a legit podcasting setup whatsoever. Obviously, Grace and I don't live in the same city, so getting a studio and filming in person isn't really super feasible for us. We're really doing this on our own. This is completely self-funded. We probably spend more than we make, honestly, because Riverside is a monthly subscription and we don't make any money off of the podcast. So we probably are spending, and from a time perspective, we are putting in way more time than the money that we're making. But that's what you have to do. You literally have to be dedicated toward it, because there's no set number of episodes that's automatically going to make you successful. It's you have to keep putting the content out there until you become successful.
And I think going into some of our lessons with the podcast, one of the things that has been a lesson for me is just because you can know, well, how do I say this? I was going to say you can know everything about something, but I don't think I know everything about anything. But you can know a lot about something and try to do something that seems similar and it doesn't necessarily translate, or what you know isn't, yeah, it doesn't translate, right? Like with our short form content, we both have grown platforms online. We work with brands all the time. We've monetized our platforms in a lot of different ways. We use different technology, our phones, microphones, all these things, whatever. And we've kind of nailed that down. Here we are 2 years in this podcast, and I think we've made what, like $1,200, $1,400 total from the podcast in the 2 years, which we literally, I think, to get the taxes done for the business, I think we literally used all of it, because it was just,
all the money
like it was just
taxes.
yeah, like we are literally at zero when you really net it all out. But it's like there's been so much to learn with this that we could have gone into it thinking, oh well, we have these platforms and we know all these things about how to grow them and monetize them. But a podcast is a whole other animal, and it would have been very easy in the beginning to just like throw in the towel and say, you know what, we weren't able to monetize it nearly as fast as we were our social media, or we weren't able to grow it to the same number of listeners or viewers or whatever as our own social media platforms. We should just stop doing it. Like that would have been the easy decision. But the thing about a podcast and about some businesses is you have to be willing to play the long game. And I think sometimes people who are willing to play the long game, what's the word for it? Delayed gratification. Like if you can do that, sometimes that is like the best path. It's just like committing to it and sticking to it and being able to play the long game with it.
Totally agree. There was a business retreat that I went on earlier this year with a girl whose podcast I've been listening to for maybe 6 months. Like I found her towards the end of 2024. And I remember when I found her podcast, I was like, wait, this girl rocks. She is crushing it. She talks so well. She gives such good insights. Her episodes are laid out so well. And then she said in an episode that this was her 6th year podcasting. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I remember her saying in the episode, like, yeah, I didn't grow for like the longest time, but now I'm in year 6 and I'm really finding my groove, and my podcast has grown exponentially. And like now it's really working for me. She podcasted for 5 years without really, I'm sure she wasn't making any money. I don't remember if she said that in the episode, but I doubt she was making any money from it beforehand. So I feel like that does really go to show that like you have to play the long game with whatever you're doing. And that actually goes into my first lesson, which is that you only fail if you give up. Like there is no success or failure. The only way that there is a definitive failure is if you 100% give up. But with success, it's very subjective. It's not like you are successful or you're not successful. It's like a spectrum. And as long as you're making forward motion toward the thing that you want to do, you are succeeding. But as soon as you decide that you're going to give up, that's when you've failed.
This reminds me too, this is like one of my lessons on this list, but it's a quote. I don't know who originally said it. I think I've said it on the podcast before too, but I saw it actually in a LinkedIn post someone made about advice that Simone Biles' dad gave her. And he basically said to her, if you're going to quit, quit on a good day, because bad days are like the days that are designed to take you out. And I think if you, because like you're saying, failure is only really if you give up. But I also think if you're giving up or deciding to stop on a good day, that's how you know that you're like, I don't really want to be doing this. Like, this is not, like on a day when you're still winning, if you still don't like what you're doing, then it's like, okay. But the bad days, especially in business, are designed to take you all the way out. Okay. Because those days, like, I always say to people, I'm like, the first year of owning a business is like the trenches, because you don't, especially if it's a business where you don't know nothing, like it's your very first business you've started, you're really starting from like zero and you're learning everything on the fly. It is the trenches. I don't want to say it like, how people would say in college, there are classes that weed people out. I think the first year of business is kind of like okay, I'm either going to really stick to this and I'm going to make it through, or it's not going to work. And for some people, it just doesn't work and they don't enjoy it. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think there will be so many bad days in business, and those are the days that are designed to take you out. So it's like, if you're going to quit on a good day. I know there was one point in time, I'm going to expose us here. There was like one point in time I remember, I think it was earlier this year, where it was just like, there was so much going on. I know it's so much going on like in my personal life, and I was just like struggling to manage everything. And I was like, bro, I'm like, and we were talking about it, and I was just like, I don't know what to do. And you were like, I don't know what to do. And we were like, blah, blah, blah. And we ended up both just like, I don't even know what you would call that conversation. It was just like so chaotic, I remember. And then we were like, well, maybe we should just like not do, I don't know, should we just not do anything? And then we literally took like a day to be like, let's just like sit on this. And we came back together and we were like, that was stupid. We were like, why did we? Okay. And then we literally were like right back to planning for like the next quarter. It was kind of funny because we just needed a moment. But it's like, if you quit on those bad days, then like this podcast wouldn't exist. Our social media pages wouldn't exist. And like, you have to be able to look a bad day dead in the eyes and be like, I'm going to show up tomorrow and I'm going to wait for a good day to make a choice about how I'm going to move forward. And more often than not, by the time another good day rolls around, you actually don't want to quit at all.
I love that so much. And I think that that's the thing that I appreciate so much about doing this podcast with you, or just like having a business partner in general for something, because if you're both on a bad day, it's like really, really bad.
Which it was that moment.
that was that instance. That was that instance for sure, when Grace and I were both like probably in our luteal phases and like not having a good day literally in the slightest. And we're like, should we just not podcast anymore? And then the next day we're like, okay, it's fine. But usually it's one or the other. And like I'll be in a bad mood and Grace will be like, come on, we still have to film, or like the other way around. But I was listening to a Mel Robbins podcast episode this morning. And on that podcast, she was talking about how you have to live your life by the rule of thirds. And she was talking about it from a business perspective. And basically what the rule of thirds says is 30% of the time you're going to feel great. 30% of the time you're going to feel very neutral. Like you're not feeling great, but you're also not feeling terrible. And then 30% of the time you're going to feel terrible. And that is such a good way to explain business in my head, because you said like the first year is really in the trenches. I honestly think like I'm still in the trenches 30% of the time. Like 30% of the time you are going to be in the trenches no matter what you're doing, no matter how successful you are, no matter how far along you are. And you kind of just learn to deal with it. You learn that in the 30% of the time where you're really having a good day, you need to work 50% harder. When you're feeling neutral, you need to do like, I don't want to say the bare minimum, but you need to do like just your average amount of tasks. And when you're in the trenches, you literally do the bare minimum and then you just wait for a good day. So I feel like, yeah, it's applicable no matter what year of business you're in. But my next lesson is that you don't have the privilege of doing exactly what you want to do at all times. And I feel like this is really important because everyone thinks about, and I feel like this is why people are interested in entrepreneurship in general. You are chasing doing something that you're passionate about. We all are, right? We want something that's going to be very fulfilling. But even if you're doing something that you love and you're doing something that you're passionate about, there are going to be a lot of tasks within that thing that you hate doing or that you don't want to do. And a lot of times I feel like those tasks are like the needle moving tasks, if that makes sense. The tasks that are actually going to move the needle forward are the ones that you kind of procrastinate, and the ones that make you feel busy but like aren't moving the needle forward are probably the ones that you don't mind doing. For example, I'm pretty introverted. I've said that on the podcast many, many times. So a lot of times showing up and creating content, like physically talking to the camera, setting my phone up, talking to the camera, is a very needle moving task for a content creator that I put off a lot. But the tasks that I don't put off, like sitting behind my planner and being like, let's think of content ideas, I do that. I could do that all day, but like that's not moving the needle forward. So I feel like that's an important distinction too. It's just like find something you're passionate about, an industry that you're passionate about, but you don't have the privilege of always doing the actual tasks that you want to be doing.
I know when we were coming up with our list of like what our lessons were, that was actually one of the lessons that I had as well. But I was like, I'm not going to put this on my list because it's like repetitive. But just to echo what you were saying, I think too, I mean, we're talking about lessons we learned from building the podcast business, but I think just business in general, a lot of people will kind of, I don't know how to exactly like give an example of how people ask this, because people ask it in a lot of different ways, but people will kind of say to me like, well, if you work for yourself, like, do you still have to do XYZ thing? Or do you still have to do, and I'm like, I still do taxes, you know what I mean? Or I still have to like do my bookkeeping, or I have to like there are absolutely tasks I don't want to do. And I think a lot of people think owning a business, I get to do what I want. And to an extent, yes. But yeah, there are tons of things that you're not going to want to do, or at times that you don't want to do it, or on a schedule that you don't want to do it. And yes, I think you have more freedom and flexibility and control than if you were working for someone else and someone else says you have to do this task and you need to do it now, versus if you own a business. But it's not like just like with everything, there's going to be things you don't want to do. Like, do I want to sit here and like scrub the floors in my apartment? No, but like I'm going to do them because I want the clean apartment. Same thing with like, I want a successful business, so I'm going to do the things that I feel like I need to do to get there, even if they're things that don't necessarily like light me up and make me super excited. And I think the more that you can accept that too, the easier it becomes. Like, you're like, okay, yeah, for me, for example, I hate bookkeeping. I hate it. I hate it. Tried to outsource it once, and it's not even hard. I just don't like doing it. And I tried to outsource it once. It was they just marked everything incorrect, like you wouldn't even believe. And then I had to just have my accountant literally clean all of it up. So it's one of those things I tend to put off, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do it. But then the more that you can accept, like, I don't like doing this. So I'm going to put on a playlist of songs I like, drink a little coffee, and I'm going to take the next 15 minutes and do it. Then you'll get a lot more done. One of the lessons on my list, since I was just echoing yours, this is like, I feel like a general, like, yeah, just general business advice is that I heard this quote, and I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but it's basically was saying that resilience is more about how, not necessarily how quickly, but how well you come back to neutral after something happens. It's not like, I don't remember, it's not like how well you get through it, but it's like, how do you get yourself back to neutral? And I think with our point about good and bad days in business, there will always be good and bad days. And there will be days where you're so pissed and so angry. You end the day feeling so defeated, or you lose an opportunity, or you disagree with your business partner on something, or you know what I mean? Like, there's so many things that you might not be happy with. But how can you get yourself back to neutral, and how do you carry yourself? How do you process things to get yourself back to a neutral state? It doesn't mean that you're going from like, I just lost an opportunity and I'm so upset, to no, everything's fine. More opportunities are coming my way and I am so abundant and whatever and I'm happy. No, you don't have to go from that. But how can you take yourself from really upset to being like, you know what? I am really upset about this and that's okay. And I'm not going to let it like rule me. I'm going to continue to be like, okay, I still want these things for my business. I'm still going to move forward. And yeah, it's just been a good lesson for me to think about when I have those bad days, is like, how can I get myself back to neutral? Not necessarily getting myself to the other end of the spectrum, but how can I get myself back to neutral? Because I think that type of resilience is what will carry you through building a business through the good and the bad days.
And I think what goes hand in hand with that really well is not making decisions based on sunk costs, like getting yourself back to neutral and be like, the past is the past, but what is the future? I think this goes kind of like hand in hand with some of our earlier lessons too, with the whole like, you only fail if you give up, and like you're still succeeding if you're moving the needle forward. I don't want that to be misconstrued with like, you always have to be moving in a completely vertical line, because moving forward can sometimes mean you're moving farther away from like the intended result. And what I mean by that is, you need to know when to pivot, not considering what happened in the past and the sunk costs that happened in the past. So let's say that Grace and I, the podcast is a perfect example of this, because we filmed probably like 55 episodes of this podcast under the name Girls Talk Money. And then we decided that actually our like North Star, like what it would mean if we were mega successful with this podcast, did not go hand in hand with the name and the branding Girls Talk Money. And I remember when we made that decision, or not even when we made the decision, but when we had that initial conversation with it, at first we were like, okay, well, it's June right now. Like maybe next calendar year we'll rebrand. And then by the end of the conversation, we were like, what the heck? Like, let's just do it right now. Like, we can't think about all of the sunk costs and all of the quote unquote wasted time of filming podcast episodes under the name Girls Talk Money and building an audience under the Girls Talk Money brand, because I think a lot of those episodes performed better than some of our episodes like after the rebrand, because people were like, what the heck? This used to be a money podcast. Now it's not. But we were like, the longer we prolong that, the worse the problem is going to be. So I think that's a good one too. It's just knowing when to pivot, not making decisions based on sunk costs, and just kind of taking everything that you did in the past as a lesson and moving forward. Because even if you kind of like shift paths and divert a little bit, you're going to learn a lot from what you did in the past regardless. So it's not a sunk cost at the end of the day.
I think going off that too, when you're making business decisions, like especially in this space where your business is tied to like your personal brand, and obviously it's your personal brand, so it feels personal to you and it starts to feel like, okay, this is a reflection of me. not every decision has to be the most logical, like, oh, this is going to make me the most or whatever decision. It should be something that brings you joy. It should be the decision that also makes you happy. This is something I've had to come back to a lot because I started to think about, why did I start a business to begin with? I wanted more freedom. I wanted more flexibility. I wanted control over my time, and I wanted to be able to scale my income on my own terms. And I got into this chapter, which I was really happy in the chapter. It wasn't an issue, but I was like hustling, focused like so much on making more, whatever. And then this year I got into this chapter where, as many of you know, I've wanted to pull back a little bit. And so I stopped working Fridays and I was like, okay, I'm going to slow down because my body needs that right now. And I had a lot of like guilt over it. And I was like, oh, like, I don't know. And then I was like, hold on a second. When I look at all the reasons for why I wanted to start a business, yes, one of them was to scale my income. But if I finish the reason, it was to scale my income on my own terms. So to say, when I do want to have a season where I want to grind and make more, I can do that. And when I want to have a season where I'm like, and I'm still making more actually than I was before, even though I'm working less. But if I want to have a season where I pull back in a certain way, then I can. It was for freedom, flexibility, control. So yeah, taking a Friday off, maybe when I'm thinking, okay, I'm 26, I should be trying to maximize my income potential and all this, whatever. Maybe that's the logical thing, is to work, a normal work week like a normal person would. But the decision that actually is going to bring me more peace and joy is taking an extra day off and slowing down a little bit. And so I think sometimes, like, in business, there are logical decisions. Even with, I was just talking to my business coach the other day and we were talking about some potential things with my platform and whatever. And she said, she's like, the logical decision isn't always like the right one. She's like, I've seen things that are, and she's like, not saying that what you're doing is illogical, but she was like, she's like, I've seen things that are completely illogical be the thing that, like, just hits for somebody on their social media or ends up making them $1 million in sales or grows their platform or whatever. Sometimes it is the quote unquote illogical things, or the things that you're like, you know what, this isn't necessarily going to make me more, but it's what makes me happier. And there has to be a balance of both of those things.
No, I totally agree. And that's such a different thing than the, well, if you give up, you failed. Because I do think as a business owner, you also have to know when to pull back on certain aspects of your business and know when to focus more on other aspects. For example, let's say you own a business where you have like 4 different income streams or something, and you are going into the next year and you're looking at them and you're like, okay, streams 1 and 2 are making me more right now, but stream 4, I'm still making a decent amount. So like, I would hate to give that up. Knowing when to be like, actually, if I slow down and scale back, that's actually going to allow me to scale further later on because I'm going to double down on what's actually working. I think that's a really underrated skill as well, because something that we see on social media a lot is like, there are a million different ways for things to work, but if you try to do all of them, then nothing's going to work. You can't do everything. You can only focus on a few things at a time, if not one thing at a time, until you really get your systems down for that, and then potentially scale and diversify outside of that. So that's like a really good distinction, is like sometimes slowing down and scaling back is the answer if you want to get ahead in the long run. But going into, I think this goes really well into my next lesson, which is that your systems make or break the longevity of your business. And I'm going to give like a couple of podcast examples here. So Grace and I, obviously, as we said before, we don't make money off of this podcast. Like, we're totally playing the long game here. We honestly think that this can be really big in the long run. Like, we don't see a lot of people doing what we're doing. We don't see a lot of people our age talking about what we're talking about. We genuinely believe in ourselves and our brand. However, we know that that's going to take time. So we have to put in a lot of effort into it, but we also know that we can't put all of our effort into it because we have to make money today. We have to be doing other things to generate income because the podcast is not. So with that, it's been really hard to have this podcast until we got to a point where we had our system set up to make it really easier, or to make it a lot easier. For example, I have an assistant, and we were like, well, instead of us editing all of these episodes, let's have my assistant edit the episodes. But then we had to take it a step further and be like, okay, what is the logical file transfer between we film an episode and then my assistant edits it, but then Grace writes the caption for the episode. So like, how does that work? How does she send that file to Grace, and who's handling all of our episodes and things like that? Like, that was really confusing for us to figure out. And then a couple of weeks ago, I went to Grace and I was like, to develop a better system for us filming these podcast episodes every single month, instead of us filming once a week, why don't we try batching all of our episodes? Because one thing that wasted a lot of time for us is every single week we have to set this up. Like, it doesn't look like a lot because we're just using these like handheld microphones and our little headphones, but behind the scenes there actually is a lot of setup that goes into having this podcast, having to set up your desktop in the correct position, having to make sure that like the lighting is good and all of those things. And as we get further advanced, the setup is going to get more advanced as well. So I was like, instead of filming once a week and taking our entire Tuesday afternoon every single week, why don't we batch film and take one day a month and film 2 or 3 episodes in the morning and then 2 or 3 episodes in the afternoon and like break for lunch, and then that's it, and we don't have to film for the rest of the month. So all of that is to say, like, whatever you're trying to do, if your systems aren't there, you're making it so much harder on yourself, and you're probably not going to be able to get to the point where your business can succeed. Like, you're probably going to end up quitting before that because naturally you have other obligations. You probably have a full-time job on top of whatever you're trying to start. So yeah, take a look at your systems and try to develop better ones, because it's helped us a lot.
And also too, like on the systems note, systems take time to build because you have to see what works and what doesn't. You might, I mean, I have changed my task management system in my own business multiple times, and it took me a while to find something that really worked for me. I've tried all sorts of different productivity platforms, and I ended up with a simple to-do list, literal like check boxes, and things are just highlighted different. Like my tasks are color coded in Notion, and I check tasks off. That's what's worked the best for me. And like, it just depends. Like, but you have to try different things with your systems, but also be able to recognize where there are inefficiencies. I remember too, this is like just so, when we first started the podcast, we were trying to be like really equal, like even about like how we were dividing everything up. So I remember we didn't do this for very long before we were like, this is just like inefficient. What are we doing? I remember it was like, I think it was who, one of us was editing the episodes, and then I don't remember who, but then the file was getting uploaded to another person, and then somebody else was like writing the caption, and then like the person, not the person who wrote the caption, but like somebody else, like whoever edited it was scheduling the episode. And what kept happening was, it was like, okay, well, now the person who is editing the episode, or the person who's writing the caption, is waiting for the other person to finish editing the episode. And then they're writing, when you want to go schedule it, now you're waiting for the other person to finish the caption so you can schedule. So I'm like, we are literally getting in each other's ways. Like, why are we doing this? What are we doing here? And now like the process we have is we film, like you said, it goes to Erin's VA. She edits it. She lets me know it's in the folder, and I just handle scheduling and like writing the caption. In theory, if we look at this process, Erin is not editing it, scheduling it, or writing the caption. However, it would be much more inefficient if we both were in the process. We don't both need to be in the process here. You know what I mean? It's not, and like there are weeks absolutely where I'm like, oh, I'm not, like, hey, like I'm going to be out tomorrow. Do you mind scheduling the episode? It's not even, I don't even care. It doesn't take me long to do it at all, you know? But it's just like, we were trying so hard to make it like perfectly even that it actually just became like the most inefficient process. But it took us being able to recognize that inefficiency and being like, we're actually just creating blockers for each other in this process. Like, this is becoming more inefficient, and that's not helping us get more done. So I think that's also something too with like a partnership. If you're starting a business with somebody else, is I feel like you're going to take on different things. You're going to have different strong suits. You're going to take on different responsibilities, and that's okay. And that's fine. Like, there are things that we are both good at. There are things that I'm good at that, you know, are different than Erin. There are things that Erin's good at that I'm terrible at. Like, it's just, and you have to find the balance and not be like weird about like, oh, someone's taking that on and I'm not, or you know what I mean? Like, it's just, that's just what a partnership is. Like with our taxes, for example, and headed a lot of that because of who was doing our taxes. Erin was connected to them, and it was like, okay, yeah. So Erin's handling a lot of that communication. I'm looped into it. But it's not like Erin's sitting here being like, well, you haven't communicated. You know what I mean? It's just like, okay, this is what's efficient and this is what's working for us. And like, I will take on things in other areas, because when there are two people in the equation, you can end up just blocking each other when you both try to have your hands in every single thing. And it's just not necessary.
It is so not necessary. I forget whose turn it is, but I'll just go next because we both have like a couple less left on this list for our lessons. But I feel like we've already talked about this a little bit, but this goes hand in hand very, very well with your systems, because if you're trying to do anything entrepreneurial, you're going to have to juggle multiple things at a time. And that is a skill. That is probably one of the best skills you need to learn if you're going to be an entrepreneur, because like I just said, you probably are going to start doing this alongside of a different job. Like most people don't have the luxury of going all in on business. They actually say that you have a lower likelihood of your business succeeding if you go all in, which sounds counterintuitive, but it's probably because you don't have as long of a runway to be able to see what's working and test things and pivot, and like you're going to run out of money because you don't have a job. So most people probably start businesses alongside of a full-time job, and you need to learn how to juggle multiple things. I feel like for my first probably year and a half of like being a content creator and doing all of these side hustles and freelance gigs and all of that, I spent a lot of time and wasted a lot of time jumping back and forth between tasks. And when I was on task one, I would like have task two in the back of my mind. And then I would feel guilty for not working on task two. And then I would somehow get roped into working on task two. And I would end the day feeling like I made a quarter progress on like 6 different things. And I never felt productive. So it is a skill. It's a skill to be able to just like be super present when you're working on task one, be all in on task one, and you're going to get it done 25 times quicker, and then jump to task two. That's probably one of the best skills that I've had to learn. And it's also not something that you like have or you don't have. Like I still go through phases where I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to the end of the day and I did not get what I needed to get done. I didn't stay on track today, but you're going to have to juggle a lot of different things.
I honestly just like a note on this is not necessarily one of my like lessons, but I actually had a volleyball coach in high school. I remember I'd be at practice and he could visibly see that I was anxious. And I remember one day he asked me to like, I was going through it in my life at this point, and it was when I started to have like anxiety, and he like pulled me aside and he was like, I can literally tell that you're anxious. He's like, why are you anxious? And I was like, because I know that when I get out of here I have to do this for student council and I have this homework and I have that, and I started just like rattling everything off. And he was like, he like looked at me, he was like, I need you to compartmentalize. Like he was like, if you don't learn how to compartmentalize in life, like it's gonna run your life. He was like, you can sit here and be on the court and be thinking about everything you need to get done after you leave here. And he was like, and guess what? It's not gonna help you get any of that done any faster. He was like, it's actually gonna distract you from what you're doing here. And then you're just going to feel guilty about it later when you leave and you go home and you're like, oh, I was so focused on this that my head wasn't in the game and I started making all these mistakes at volleyball. He's like, learn to be where your feet are. And that has been like, I mean, it's 10 years later and I still think about that, like compartmentalize, be where your feet are. And I think also there's a book called, I think it's called Deep Work. I read like the first like 10 pages and then I was like, I no, the way it was written, I was like, no, thank you. But basically the concept is about like focused work periods. And that's been really helpful for me too, of being like, okay, just adopting the mindset of one thing at a time. And I remind myself of this all the time. Even this morning, this week has been, I don't know what is going on. It's just like been haywire. I've had a bunch of calls and I'm like behind on work. And so I'm going to have to work on Friday, even though I don't really want to. But I was like filming something this morning. I was looking at my to-do list and I was so overwhelmed, and I was like filming a video and I was getting like stressed about all the stuff I had to do. And I was like, I literally said to myself out loud, I said, one thing at a time, one thing. We are on this one thing and we will get to the next one thing after this one thing is done. But me trying to get to another thing while I'm still on thing one is really not helpful. Even I was like going to upload a video for a brand deal into the folder that my manager uses. And I was like, well, let me open LinkedIn because I need to give this girl feedback on her portfolio and my freelancing course. And I was like, literally finish uploading the video. Like I was trying to use the 30 seconds that the video was taking to load to like go do something else. I'm like, complete one task at a time. Like you don't need to be doing a million things at once. It really is not helpful. But okay, another lesson I have 2 more lessons on my list. One that I thought of when you were talking earlier, especially about business decisions and starting a business alongside a full-time job. One thing that my accountant actually said to me earlier this year, and it has been like, I was like, wow, okay, this is like really insightful. I had said to him, we were talking about where, as a business owner, like where you keep money, like how much you keep in your business account versus in personal versus in like, where do you put all of these things? And he was like, what is your mindset? Like, what's fueling this question that you're asking? And I was like, I want to minimize risk. Like, I was like, I want to put my money in such a place that, you know, God forbid I were to ever get sued or something, my assets are protected and I'm not leaving just a bunch of cash sitting in here or there or, you know, wherever. And he said to me, he's like, well, he said, I want you to get it out of your head that there's going to be a risk-free decision. He was like, I I need you to get that out of your head, that there's not going to be a decision that is going to make risk zero really anywhere in business. Every move that you're making, there's going to be some risk associated with it. If you're spending your time, for example, after working a full-time job, you are spending it, working on your business, the potential consequence or risk associated with that is that you might be missing out on something else that maybe you'll look back down the line and say, you know what, I wish that I didn't spend time on that. That's the risk in it. The risk is that you're going to look back and have regret. But it could also go the other way. If you are spending your time after work not working on the business that you want to start, there's a risk in that too, that you look back 5 years down the line and you think, I wish I used that time for something else. Same with every single business decision. For example, with us pivoting the podcast, there's risk associated with that. People could have been like, yeah, we don't want to listen to this. And we have one listener or 0 listeners even. The podcast, nothing ever happens with it. Or I pivoted my brand. We both have pivoted our brands more from like financial education to incorporating more lifestyle into what we do, a more lifestyle lens. And like, there's a risk associated with that of like, okay, I built this audience around one thing. I'm pivoting. They might not want to see it and I could lose my whole platform. But every single decision, there's also risk with staying. Let's say we never pivoted the podcast, what's the risk in staying? Maybe the podcast doesn't grow because we're not passionate about it, or we're unhappy, or we stop doing it sooner because we don't even like it. We run out of things to say, like whatever it may be. There's risk associated with every single decision. And I think as a business owner, you have to learn to be comfortable with a level of risk because it is everywhere. And that was a really, really good mindset shift for me. And because you were talking too earlier about like pulling certain levers in different areas with your income streams and being like, okay, this is making me more right now, or this is where I want to focus or whatever. And there is risk with that. There's risk in saying, I'm going to let this freelance client go, for example, because it's Q4 and Q4 is when brand deals tend to pick up and I want to have more time to do that, or whatever it may be. There's risk associated with everything. You're not going to have a risk-free decision ever. And you have to learn to be okay with that.
That's so much. And I feel like that kind of goes into another lesson that I did not have on this list, but it's probably one of the biggest things that you need to know if you want to get into anything entrepreneurial. You have to let go of your fear of wasted time. We talked about this a little bit before with like the sunk cost stuff, but like you cannot move afraid that what you're currently working on is going to be a waste of time later, because at that point, you're literally going to make no effort to do anything. You're not going to take any action because you have no idea what is going to be a waste of time and what's not going to be a waste of time. I have a really good example of this. When I first started my TikTok account, I actually got started talking like pretty strictly about investing, which I really don't make that much investing content now. But at the beginning, that was like what I was passionate about, like wealth building, investing. All of my TikTok accounts were about those topics. And I was like, I want to launch a product. And it was like a digital product. And I wasn't even charging anything for it. It was a free product, but I was like, oh, I'll like build an email list and like blah, blah, blah. I had like 10,000 followers at the time. And I spent so much time, I'm not kidding, probably like a month developing this like intro to investing guide on Canva. And I spent so much time on it. Like it was so well thought out. It was 20 pages long. It was like everything that you need to know. Like if you've never invested before, like blah, blah, blah. And like no one downloaded it and it was free. And so it's not even like it was wasted money because people weren't downloading it, but I spent so much time on it. And I was like kind of bummed. I was like, oh my gosh, I just spent that much time on it and like blah, 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 wasted time. It wasn't wasted time because a month later, people started commenting on my videos asking for the budget template that I was using. And they were like, hey, can you list your budget template? And so literally a couple months later, I had a paid product. It was a product that I didn't know that I was going to end up listing because people were the ones that were like asking me for it. I thought I was going to be like ended up selling this investing guide. I don't know what I was thinking. But anyway, it's just like all to say that I can't move through life and business being like, well, I'm not going to spend time on something because I don't know if it's going to work out and I'm afraid of wasting that time. After I took the investing guide down, I didn't for 1 second think like, shoot, I can't take this down because I spent so much time on it and that would be wasted time. Like you just have to waste your time because you're going to learn something out of every single thing that you do.
It's a sunk cost fallacy because the time's already gone. The time is, you literally cannot get the time back anyways. The money's already gone, the time's gone, the whatever. It's like, you can sit there and boohoo about quote unquote how much time you wasted or whatever, or you could just choose to move forward. Okay. The last lesson I have on my list is sort of podcast related, but also sort of like personal business related. And it's that it's okay to have help and it's not something that you should feel you have to hide. I think And I don't know like where I acquired this belief from. It's probably like somewhere deeply rooted. But I'm someone who, one thing I've just learned about myself, I'm someone who actually works a lot better when I, in some areas of my business, have someone to bounce ideas off of. For example, I love having a business coach, having content creator friends to bounce ideas off of. I used to have a content strategist that I worked with, and I'd meet with her every other week. And like, it wasn't even that she was sharing. I mean, she's absolutely amazing, but it wasn't that she was sharing like we were reinventing the wheel every 2 weeks. But it was like I could come to her and get her thoughts and opinions on what I was doing and how can I improve this and what do you think of this, for my brand or whatever. And I have found it immensely helpful to have someone to bounce off of. I found that that's really helpful for me. Even if I share something or like, let's say, Erin's my person I'm bouncing something off of today, and she shares something that I'm like, you know what? I actually don't think that's a good fit, but it inspired me to think of like, now I have this idea instead that I think will actually be really good for me or whatever. It's not always that I'm not getting answers necessarily from people, but it's helping me think through whatever I'm trying to work through. And I have found that really helpful. And for a long time, I felt frustrated by that. I remember talking to my friend earlier this year, and I was like, I just hate that like I have to like I'm the kind of person who like I need help to do the things that other people don't need help to do. And she said to me, she was like, okay, so I was talking to my friend about this, and or one of her friends like overheard the conversation or something. And her friend was like, why would she feel guilty for using the resources she has available to her? And so my friend relayed that back to me. And I was like, wow, like it was a friend of a friend who gave this insight, but I was like, that's such a better way to think about it. Like you wouldn't feel like if you're thirsty, you're not going to feel guilty for drinking water. When the sink is right next to you, you're like, well, yeah, of course, like I'm thirsty, I'm going to drink water. So if I need a second opinion, if I need help, and I have the ability to use a resource like a friend or a business coach to hire somebody or whatever, I will absolutely do that. And I think for example, with our podcast, we have Erin's VA who helps edit the episodes. We now have my assistant who helps pull clips for us to be posting in Spotify. It's something new we're trying. If you see our clips in Spotify, please engage with them. But like we have people who are helping us. I have an assistant who helps me in my business. There are certain things that I outsource to him that are it's immensely helpful. And it's not something you need to feel embarrassed by if you need help or support or whatever in growing your business. It's not a bad thing. And your business is not any less successful. It's not any less worthy of success. It's not any less important than somebody else's business who maybe doesn't need help. The way that each person operates is so different, and it doesn't have to mean anything. There's a book, this is reminding me, I'll make this recommendation, but there's a book called Don't Believe Everything You Think. And I just want to like add this, and I've talked about it a bunch of times on the podcast because it is so good. But essentially part of what the book says is there's a difference between a thought and thinking. And a thought is like the thing that comes to your head, and thinking is when you start to give that thought meaning. And so, for example, I can have this thought and be like, I like having someone to bounce ideas off of, or I like having someone to hold me accountable every week to making moves in my business that I might be scared to make. And then I can just leave that thought there. I don't have to give that thought any meaning to where I say, I like having someone who can hold me accountable to making big moves in my business. And that means that I am not as good at business as somebody else, or I will not be as successful as somebody else who can do it all on their own. You don't have to give it meaning. So acknowledge what you need as a business owner and then respond to it without giving it some sort of bigger negative meaning. Like our podcast is not any less or is not going to be any less successful than any other podcast out there because we have people helping us build it. Like that doesn't really make sense, you know?
No, I love that. I feel like we could do an entire episode on delegation and how to delegate, because that's something that I feel like I've learned a lot about over the last couple of years as well, outside of the podcast even. And yeah, that's kind of back to the conversation on like doing things that you don't necessarily want to do as a business owner. You are going to have to do things that you don't want to do, but at a certain point you need to take inventory of the things that you don't want to do and you need to delegate them. Or even things that like you don't want to do but you're also not good at. I feel like that's the quadrant, like the part of the quadrant that you should be focused on is like, what do I not like doing and what am I flat out not good at? And what can I hire someone else for that's going to be 10 times better at it? I actually just onboarded an assistant, not exclusively for the podcast, but a lot for my own stuff. And I'm bringing her on 10 hours a week. It's thousands of dollars a month to have her. She's US based. She's edited my YouTube videos before. Like she's a great hire and I'm so excited to have her a part of the team. And a lot of what she's doing for me is my email newsletter. And I did feel a lot of guilt for that because I'm like, why can I not send out a weekly email. Like Grace sends out a weekly email. She has a newsletter that she does herself every single week. And I'm like, I hate doing it and I'm not good at it. So like, let me have someone to hold me accountable that I'm paying money to, that is like, let's send out your weekly newsletter. So that's something that she's going to be helping me with. So you do get to a point where you need to learn to delegate. And if anything, like you said, the benefit of it is just the accountability. If you're working completely on your own, there is a big lack of accountability to like, if I don't send out that weekly newsletter, like no one's holding me accountable for it. Or if I don't podcast one week, like it's not affecting anyone else, just me. Well, like, no, I have a business partner. So like I have to podcast every single week because she's holding me accountable for it. So yeah, you definitely get to a point where that becomes prevalent. But let us know if you guys like this episode, because we love these kind of like lessons learned type of episodes where we just like brainstorm on our own and bring our list to the episodes and share them together.
Yeah. Especially this one, like being our 100th episode. Like, whether you've been here from the start or if you're a newer listener, like, thank you so much for all of the support on the podcast. It's actually insane to think about the fact that some people have listened to us for 100 Mondays in a row now. Like,
that's crazy.
That's a crazy thought to think about. It is crazy. And like, we see all the comments in Spotify, we see all of your guys' DMs, like we see everything, and it genuinely means the world to us. So like, and again, this is something where we're playing the long game. And so we understand that a lot of y'all are playing the long game with us too. And helping
Every
support
time
us
like,
in that long journey.
Like so much in your episodes. It's like, we're working on it. Okay.
Like, I'm trying to stop saying like
and Mel Robbins podcast today. And I was like, she does not say like one time. But we're working on it. One day when we're her age, we're gonna be pro podcasters.
We're gonna get there.
So yeah, thank you guys, to iterate everything that Grace just said. Thank you guys, and it'll be really cool a couple years from now when we're on episode 200 to see how far we've come as well, because we've obviously had a lot of growth in 100 episodes. But with that, leave any episode ideas or anything else you guys want to hear from us in Spotify. That's where we kind of like pull and source all of our episode ideas from. So if you could leave them all in Spotify, that would be amazing. The other thing that you can leave on Spotify is we do monthly Q&A episodes as well on the last Friday of every month. So if you want to leave any questions that you want us to cover in that Q&A, you can leave that in Spotify as well. But with that, thanks for tuning into episode 100 of the podcast, and until next week.